Episode 5 of Alien Earth, entitled In Space No One ... I'm going to start off by saying, last episode I said this was the best one so far. This episode, hands down, is probably better than Alien Romulus because it felt like a self-contained movie. This episode, Noah Hawley gave us the definition of sci-fi horror. There was heavy mystery, a lot of creatures, and it was intense from the opening moment when Morrow is awakened after 8 weeks in being in like a slumber. And we have this character who he refers to as Chlamydia, who tells him about the fire in the lab, that two of the specimens got free, the captain is dead. And he doesn't really seem fazed about it because I imagine that 8 weeks or so have passed since this happened. So it connects to what we saw in the first episode where we were introduced to the entire crew, and then it has this kind of jump from them being around the table, laughing, talking about the mission. We got to know all of the crew members, and it went right into disaster mode, into pure chaos, where you see Morrow was locked into this little control room, and at the time, I'm not sure if we knew her name. Her name is Captain Zavari, was banging on the glass, begging him to let her in, and he wouldn't. And we didn't know what happened, what sabotaged the ship, why was the ship going to crash. It was all a mystery. This episode answers all of the questions and a whole lot more. So this episode starts, we see the two victims of the face hugger. It is Captain Dinsdale and Bronsky. We find out was also having relations with the captain, which is code violation. Bronsky, who's the only surviving crew member with the face hugger on. They try to remove it off of Captain Dinsdale, but that's when they learned that when you try to cut the face huggers, the acid comes out and it burnt through the captain's neck, so he died. So they're trying to figure out, what do we do with Bronsky? And the solution was to put him in cryo, freeze him, and then they'll figure it out when they land. I believe they were like 18 days away from Earth. And then we find out from the engineers, Shmuel, I believe his name is, and Malachite. That's the younger guy, and Shmuel is the older one who's always with the little spit cup and his tobacco. We find out that they're running low on fuel, and without the navigational systems, they're not just flying towards Earth. They are heading towards Earth like a missile. Morrow automatically starts thinking that there's a saboteur on the ship. If we thought that Morrow was no nonsense from the beginning, this episode solidified how hardcore and how dedicated to the job this man is. So this whole episode now, we get more into each of the crew members, right? Chibuzo, I hope I'm pronouncing the name right. She's the scientist with the funny afro. I always noticed from that first episode in this one that she has this thing about eating around specimens when she's in her lab. Like, I would never do that, because I remember when I used to work at a hospital, I was an orderly, and when I'd have to bring bodies down to the morgue, the mortician working in there, and this guy had his lunch on a desk and a body on a slab no more than 5 feet away from his food. Could never understand that for the love of God. But she claims that she likes to eat her food in the lab because Tang, our Dave, he has a tendency to smoke cigarettes, and she can't take the smoke, so that's why she's always eating in the lab. So we see that she's studying those bloodsucker roaches. She thinks that if they don't have any other food but blood, they won't go for anything else, which is a great setup, because she's drinking out of this water thermos, and she puts it down, and when she puts it down, condensation from the water spills from the thermos and hits the table. Now across from her, in another little containment unit, is the eye. We're just going to call it the eye. We won't call it the thing with the tentacles. It is referred to as the eye, and it is watching her so hard. And I love, once again, the kaleidoscope vision that we get, because it has like 3 or 4 pupils on its one eyeball, and to the point where Buzo looks at it and it's like, hey man, take a picture, it'll last longer. She knows that it's watching, and I'm just like, this thing is so sinister. And we're gonna learn these creatures, they are highly advanced, extremely intelligent creatures. When the blood-sucking bugs realize that there is water on the surface of the table, one of them is feeding on like a dead rat, sucking the blood out of it, but the other one wants that water. And I'm thinking, why does it want the water? It is so intelligent that it learned how to unlock the containment unit. So while Chibuzo is distracted, it unlocks itself, climbs out of the containment unit, climbs over the water thermos, and sprays parasites, and then plants itself into her sandwich with the hopes of being ingested. That's like some suicide bomber shit. But luckily, one of the other scientists comes in and sees it right away in the sandwich and picks it up, puts it back into the containment unit. She puts the eye into a safe holding space and thinks that, oh, that's it. She doesn't know that the water's been contaminated, and she doesn't know how intelligent the eye is. The minute they leave that lab, the eye bangs against the glass so that it falls over and shatters, and thus we have, that's how it got loose. Moro is now going around trying to figure out who is the saboteur. As Morrow investigates the lab, we see the classic acid burns through the steel grate floors, and we know that can't have an alien movie without those acid burns. Then he checks the surveillance footage and we see what happened. And this is something really cool that I like that Noah Hawley did. We went from the CCTV footage and would transition into what happened. So it went from present to flashback, and it was seamless. It was really well done. So we saw what happened to the captain and Bronsky, and then on another camera we got to see a person opening the cage for the xenomorph egg to hatch and for it to be freed, but we don't see the face. We don't know who it is. So because of this, they need to interrogate everyone and find out who it was. But then they question Tang, and Tang, I love this actor and his portrayal of this robot. He is so creepy. I don't know who programmed him to be so creepy, but he is. And he is the one that gives Morrow the best clue, because he knows who it is, but he won't tell Morrow. He tells him that the answer is right in front of his eyes, but he can't see it. The question he poses to him, or what he says to him, is just because the computer says that someone is in their cryo bed doesn't mean someone is in their cryo bed. Boom. We know right there and then someone is pretending to be in cryo sleep and they are not. So now the hunt is to figure out which one of the crew members in cryosleep is the one that's faking it. Meanwhile, we have the parasites in the water and we have the eye on the loose. Now, one little thing that I found that was probably the only lighthearted thing in this, and it's the relationship between Shmuel and Malachite, the younger guy, the younger engineer. They always have this funny banter between the two of them, and I always like that dynamic of the OG always schooling the youngin, right? And for some reason, Shmuel is always after food. We saw that in the first episode. He's always asking, you gonna eat that? He want to take people's food, and he's doing it again. And he says something really interesting, because Malachite has this little pie with him, like a little apple pie, and Shmuel says, you're gonna eat all that. Says, you know, if you break that in two halves, eventually each half becomes a whole. And that's like a little mind fuck for Malachite. He's like, how's that even possible? I was wondering how that comes into play, because that line is so great, it couldn't have been for nothing. We also have this very interesting moment which makes this episode even better. We learn so much about not just other crew members, we learn a lot about Morrow. He's a cyborg, but he has a family, a daughter, and we see him in his room looking at pictures, letters, and this song called La Mer, and it has one of those it's like a real old-timey song. It's kind of haunting. I like music like that, and it connects back to the first episode when he was in the control room sending the message that all the crew members are dead, and Zavari was banging on the glass begging for him to open. He was humming a song, and we come to find out that that's the song that he was humming, and it's something that I believe connects him back home. It takes him back to when he was with his daughter. Now things kick up into high gear when Morrow goes through everyone's personal video log, and then he comes across a man named Petrovich, who is apparently having a conversation with none other than boy Cavalier. Boom! We know exactly who the saboteur is, and they're making a deal that if he brings the creatures to him, he is going to rise to the top. All he has to do is bring these creatures back and crash the ship. And his concern is like, well, what if I don't survive the crash? I'm there thinking Boy Cavalier might say, well, if you don't survive the crash, then we'll give the money to your family or whatever. And he just says, oof, that'd be bad for you, wouldn't it? No heart. So the hunt now is to find Petrovich. And while Morrow is trying with his boy Chlamydia, chaos happens. When Morrow was telling everyone that there's a saboteur and each of them need to be interviewed, we saw Malachite pick up Chibuzo's water and drank the parasite. She didn't drink it, he did. And shortly after, he becomes infected, starts vomiting blood, falls into a coma. They take him to the sick bay, and in the sick bay, she gives the command to remove the parasite. Morrow is against it. He does not know what will happen. He strongly advises that they don't. But the scientists, which is Chibuzo and her partner, they both do it, and they pull the first one off, and it releases these spores into the lab and starts killing them automatically. They have to contain the lab. They shut it down. It's decontaminated. Everyone in there is dead, as we found them in episode 1 or episode 2. So at this point is when Morrow takes over, because the Captain Zavari made too many mistakes. While Zavari is wallowing in her own shit, the Xenomorph comes. And this is after the Xenomorph got Tang, who I didn't even think it would hunt anything that wasn't human. And it did. So it comes for her next. And that's where the episodes are about to connect between this one and the first one. Her running, her escaping. She locks herself in a lab and thinks that she's with Shmuel, not knowing that the eye has possession over his body, like a body snatchers 101. And what happens in this scene when Morrow gets in, I clapped, I kicked. This was so awesome. Morrow is not afraid of it, and he warns the eye not to make any sudden moves. But then the Xenomorph comes from behind, and he just says, literally, fuck it, let's do it. And he fires his electric shock at the eye and escape. But then I'm wondering, is the eye and the Xenomorph gonna work together? Nope. They battle. That was an awesome fight scene between these two entities. And by the looks of it, it looked like the eye using Shmuel was kicking the Xenomorph's ass. It bit into it. I was wondering if it was going to have the capability of possessing a Xenomorph, but we didn't see that moment where the eye goes into the, its next vessel. But basically from then we see what happens. It pursues Zavari. She gets caught. It rips her to shreds, and Morrow protects himself in the safety capsule while the ship crashes to Earth. Then from that we jump into the present time where we left off in the last episode, and Morrow has made it to the Wayland Yutani building where he's talking with the young Yutani, and she tells him that her grandmother was very fond of him. And right there we get another piece of his history where he says that he was just a young kid on the street with palsy in his arm, and she took him in and she raised him, and I guess she gave him the cybernetic parts that made him who he is now. And there's something really cool too. Her security guards, they look like feudal Japan warriors, but they're holding futuristic guns, not swords. And she's telling him, look, there's an arbitration tomorrow. Boy Cavalier has agreed to it. We'll see if the lawyers can fix this. And Morrow's like, unless lawyers means soldiers, we have to do this my way. He wants to kill Boy Cavalier and take back everything that was stolen, meaning the creatures. Morrow is going down as probably one of the best characters since Ripley in the Alien franchise. I'm putting that on everything. So yeah, that was basically it. Like, hands down, this was a phenomenal episode. And like I said, if they had added an extra half an hour and turned this into a movie, this would have been better than Alien Romulus. That's how good this episode was. I didn't want it to end. It was fantastic. What are your thoughts? Have you seen the episode? Let me know your thought, and I will catch you on the next one. Peace.